Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the first full council of this municipal year. Do we have any apologies? Councillor Skelton.
Councillor Carr, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Any declarations of interest? No? Minutes of the meeting of the council held on the 2nd of March 2016. Thank you. Right. Now, announcements from the Mayor. I believe that Councillors Bolton and Grimmadell have want to do a short presentation on their recent visit to Osnabrück.
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. I can inform Council that Councillor Grimmadell and I spent the weekend in not together, in... I shall start that again, I think. It gives me great pleasure. I'll just carry on now. Last weekend, Councillor Grimmadell, myself, the former Deputy Mayor Councillor Titley, were part of the civic delegation to Osnabrück, one of our twin cities. We were there to celebrate 40 years of our twinning agreement with that city. And the weekend was marked with various celebrations and openings. Osnabrück, in fact, were celebrating 25 years of twinning with Russia, 25 years of friendship with Evansville in the USA, 10 years of friendship with Hefei in China, 55 years of twinning with Haarlem, and as I said, 40 years twinning with this city. We were extremely well looked after, so we'd like to formally thank all the staff over in Osnabrück who looked after us for those few days. We did bring back greetings from Osnabrück and the Oberbürgermeister to this city. We have brought some gifts back, which are on the far end of the dais. The vase is from Turkey, the bowl is from Haarlem, and this, Madam Mayor, I'd like to present with you now, is from Osnabrück to celebrate our friendship links, whether they be schools, whether they be social groups, whether they be history groups, and indeed Councillor Grimmadell is going to see if he can get a link with the Civic Society to even more expand the initiative we have with them. So I'd like to present this with you now, and if it could be on display in our Osnabrück case that we do have in the landing, to obviously celebrate the friendship links we have. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Bolton. Thank you. Councillor Grimmadell, do you want to add anything?
Sorry, Madam Mayor?
Would you like to add anything?
No, I endorse Councillor Bolton's every word. Thank you.
Hey, yeah, we'll have that in writing.
Before we move on to procedural issues, I would like to thank everybody for their attendance today, both here in the Chamber and at the Cathedral. It's been a lovely day. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. There are a couple of procedural issues that I just wish to take full council through. Madam Mayor has agreed to amendments to the agenda. She has accepted a late report in respect of taxi licensing. This will appear immediately after item 19 on the agenda and before published item 20, complaint about a councillor. Also, Madam Mayor has expressed a wish that the motion put to full council by Councillor Barker and seconded by Councillor Poulter, will be discussed immediately after item 15 on the agenda. So that is immediately after the Member Steering Group item and immediately before the constitutional appointments item.
We move on now to item 11, announcement by the Leader of the Council on the appointment of Council Cabinet.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Despite the tough budget decisions that this Labour administration has been forced to make as a result of unprecedented Conservative central government cuts, this Labour group has a mandate to continue the important work of taking our great city forward. Therefore, Madam Mayor, this Labour administration's cabinet appointments are as follows. Martin Rawson, Deputy Leader and Cabinet Member for Communities and City Centre Regeneration, responsible for the manifesto commitment to progress work to enable the provision of the new assembly rooms and the redevelopment of the former Debenhams and Duckworth Square site, and also create new skill jobs at Infinity Park. Baggy Shankar, Cabinet Member for Regulatory Services, in addition to his day-to-day responsibilities as Symphony Ward Councillor re-elected on the mandate to replace Moorway Swimming Pool, to take the project lead to drive that manifesto commitment forward to give this city what it deserves, a new swimming pool. Asif Afzal, Cabinet Member for Cohesion and Integration, responsible also for the manifesto commitment to improve the state of the roads and pavements in our busiest district centres, which are vital to our local economy. Fareed Hussain, Cabinet Member for Urban Renewal, responsible for delivering the manifesto commitment to improve housing in our most deprived neighbourhoods and build a new affordable homes to tackle the housing crisis created by Conservative government policies. Sarah Russell, Cabinet Member for Education and Skills, responsible for improving education standards in the city and also deliver the manifesto commitment to provide free breakfasts for Derby school children, which has been highlighted, Madam Mayor, by teachers and the Parliamentary Committee on Poverty as an issue for children in inner city areas hit hard by government cuts. In addition, to promote business in our communities and local schools to raise aspirations amongst young people. Sarah Bolton, Cabinet Member for Safeguarding and CYP, responsible for protecting our most vulnerable citizens, our children, from exploitation, neglect and sexual abuse, making sure that despite the political pressure faced as a result of cuts the Council has had to make to discretionary services, that we do not make the moral mistake of instead making cuts to services that benefit our children. Just look at the crisis, Madam Mayor, children's services are facing in neighbouring cities like Birmingham and Leicester, and the tragic consequences are reported in the media. It is worth noting, Madam Mayor, that the independent chair of the Safeguarding Board recently endorsed the budget decisions that this Council has made to protect the most vulnerable. Martin Repton, Cabinet Member for Integrated Health and Care, delivering our manifesto commitment to support elderly and the vulnerable people to stay in their homes where it fulfills their wishes and is best for their care and quality of life. Lisa Eldred, Cabinet Member for Jobs and Fair Employment, responsible for delivering the Employment Charter. And finally, Madam Mayor, I will undertake the Cabinet role for strategy and policy, responsible for implementing the 15-year vision for Derby and also the manifesto commitment to provide low-cost energy for Derby residents. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Van Waite. Now, I believe that we have got a petition. Yeah. Is Mr. Allbones here? Oh, right, lovely. Okay, I'd like to invite you to speak on this for a maximum of 5 minutes. Okay. Is David going to...
Martin Repton, 2,698 votes. Martin Rawson, 2,107 votes. Ranjin Banwit, 1,447 votes. Derby Citizens Advice and Law Centre, 5,047 votes. I raise this to point out the two most crucial elements of democracy, the most direct ways we can actually are reached by the people are with the petition and with the election that we've recently had. alongside the petition, we had a huge number of comments in terms of the value of this service, ranging from local GPs talking about how important it was to their patients, to actually one person who said it actually saved their life. Now, this service saw 10,000 Derby's most vulnerable people last year. It actually saved the local public sector nearly £15 for every pound spent on it. It actually brought in another £4.50 for every pound invested. Unfortunately, those are now jeopardised with the cut that's been put in place. And also our ongoing involvement as an active partner with a range of council initiatives is now jeopardised. We understand that cuts have been received from national government. We understand that actually these are unprecedented times. We understand that these are very difficult decisions. We don't understand why the council ignored its duty under best value in terms of considering the full financial implications of the cuts. We don't understand why the council has ignored its duty under the Care Act to provide a universal service to all residents of the city, which is no longer in place now our service is closed. And we don't understand why the council, what we're going to do with the 10,000 clients who would have sought our help in the next 12 months. It's not too late. There is still an opportunity to right this wrong. Don't be the council who ignores local people. Don't be the council who close the Citizens Advice Bureau. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Allbones. Does anybody wish to speak on this? Councillor Ralston.
This issue has been raised at both full council and cabinet meetings following a...
Stand up.
Sorry, my apologies. This issue has been raised at both full council and cabinet meetings following a call-in to dispute the Corporate Scrutiny Board's recommendation about finding the means to support the group, which has been successful in the past 12 months. The Labour administration rejected that call-in. The City's spoken and now presented you with this position here today. Clearly, Cabinet have not been able to demonstrate that they have considered all options. The Conservative Party suggested that this administration needed to identify which groups had been successful. The CAB has clearly been successful. Did this administration complete a cost-benefit analysis and look into the alternative funding levels and/or the alternative outcomes to support the Council's ability to meet statutory requirements? Has this administration identified what potential cost pressures will fall on the current Council services? The Citizens Advice Bureau has identified that for every £1 the Council invests in them, it saves this Council £14.92. Whilst this Cabinet openly calls for community groups and voluntary sector to fill the gaps where they have removed funding, they have taken away the support to help develop that idea by removing the vital provision to the CAB and other voluntary organisations, which is the only way to enable that concept to be realised and successful. I would suggest that there has been no assessment made into the potential benefit and value of other options considered, nor detail given for discontinuing alternative option. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Ralston. Councillor Graves.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I think the speakers that we've just heard have spoken very eloquently, and I think every councillor in this chamber understands the importance of the Citizens Advice Bureau and the service they give. It's clearly an issue of funding. I believe that without the Citizens Advice Bureau, the cost of the council is greater than the money that we spend. I'm not going to repeat everything that's been said, only to move an amendment, Madam Mayor, of which removes the words notes and adds the words supports and seeks to review the budgets in order to keep the Citizens Advice Bureau in Derby open. I have a copy if you need it.
Madam Mayor has asked me to read the Councillor Graves' amendment. If the amendment is approved, the motion will read as follows: that Council supports the petition and seeks to review budgets in order to keep the Citizens Advice Bureau in Derby open.
Am I allowed to continue? Do I have a seconder?
Yeah, I wish to second that, Madam Mayor.
Sorry.
Sorry, does Councillor Evans wish to speak now or to reserve his right to speak?
I wish to reserve my right to speak.
Okay.
Thank you.
Right.
But I do second it.
Okay then, Councillor Graves.
The reason for this amendment, Madam Mayor, is as per previous petitions that have come to this council, the controlling group have managed to note petitions pretending to support them, but actually not doing anything in practice. What this motion does, what this amendment does, is allows you to vote where you believe things should happen. And I believe that we should support the Citizens Advice Bureau with their funding.
Thank you, Councillor Graves. Does anybody else wish to speak on this? Councillor Skelton.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Yes, I would support this amendment. If we're going to really be serious about saving the general advice service that the Citizens Advice Bureau currently run, then we have to basically review budgets and see where we can make savings in order to gather money together in order to save this service, and it is that important.
Thank you, Councillor Skelton. Councillor Webb.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Congratulations on your election this morning. The Department of Work and Pensions nationally saves £163 million because of Citizens Advice Bureaus. Local authorities, through reducing cases of homelessness, save £57 million, and the Department of Health, by reducing the use of health services, £47 million. We are talking, or at least Councillor Banwaite was talking, about unprecedented government cuts. We are just adding to the value of those cuts by closing a Citizens Advice Bureau that provides excellent value for money. This is not a council issue. This is an issue that affects over 10,000 people a year in this city. But the council, it will be affected by having to pick up the bill for those services that the Citizens Advice Bureau currently pays for. The review of budgets in this case, and there was an amendment put at the budget meeting by the Liberal group, offered the opportunity to use a windfall from the council to actually save and invest in the Citizens Advice Bureau. That was turned down. I think we need to carefully review where we go with this. We will be the only city in the country without a Citizens Advice Bureau. And the work that I'm quoting from was done by the National Citizens Advice Bureau, taking into account all their offices across the country. So 10,000 a year plus the people that we are, or that the Citizens Advice Bureau are supporting, we will have to pick up the bill for. The pound invested by the council and returning £14.92 in value. But there is another issue. The pound invested by this council in CAB, brings in additional funding from other sources of £4.39, and that was for the year 2014-2015. I don't think that any of us in this chamber would like to see those 10,000 people left without an opportunity to have independent advice, and we have a duty, a legal duty, under the Care Act to provide that independent advice. The Citizens Advice Bureau has provided that for many years in this city. It is and has been rated as an excellent service, and we are doing a disservice to the volunteers and the paid staff at CAB who support this work. I support the amendment, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Webb. Councillor Kerr.
Mayor, thank the speakers who have already spoken, because clearly there is a very strong view from many parties here that the Citizens Advice Bureau is an important aspect of Derby. Personally, I have directed people to the CAB when it's part of some the problems they're presenting are not things that I can deal with directly, and I'm sure that many other councillors here have done that or would wish to do that in the future. But it's primarily a service to the people of Derby. It may be 10,000 last year, it may have been 10,000 the year before, and some of those will be repeat visits and some of them will be new people. But just knowing that the Citizens Advice Bureau is there in case you need their help is something that every person in Derby has until now had. It's the knowledge that there is help available. The work that they do raises the status of Derby. Because it's helping solve homelessness problems, it means we have fewer people on our streets. We have fewer, the statistics that the council has to show in terms of indebtedness, in terms of homelessness, are improved because of the work they're doing. So it benefits us directly and our standing with relation to the government. The extra spend money that people are able to claim from the help they get in terms of debt advice means that there's more money coming into Derby, and that means that there are more shops remaining open and fewer vacant shops on our streets. So that is again the status of Derby that we're talking about here. During the budget process, the Liberal Democrat group raised, I believe, 3 times options for which this could be looked at and how funding could be found. We weren't successful there, and I think the wording of the amendment, which doesn't say we will do this, but it hands back to the majority group an expectation that they will look very hard again at how it can be funded. So I won't go over again the ways in which we've suggested in the past, but please look at that. The balance on this chamber, as we all know, is now very tight, and we know that the slightly small groups are very much looking in one direction. And if the majority group can recognise that, and working across party is something that will benefit everybody within the city, I hope we can do that.
Thank you, Councillor Kerr. Councillor Harwood.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. You know, this decision taken by this council flabbergasts me completely and utterly. This Labour council are, with this decision, turning their backs on the very residents that have supported them, that have voted them in. How can you do that to your own people? It's unbelievable. Let's have a look at these 10,000 people that CAB have helped in the last year. The majority come from Normington, Arboretum, Simfin, Derwent, Alveston, Abbey, all Labour-controlled wards, the very people that Labour say that they support. They've turned their backs on their own people by this decision. the one decision they could have made that even the people of Oakwood would have accepted. Oakwood were bottom of the list, only one person from Oakwood in that 10,000. But the residents of Oakwood, I know, will support the continuing of this very, very worthwhile organisation. I condone you for this, and I say, do a U-turn now and support the people that have put you in the position you're in today. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Harwood. Councillor Banwaite.
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. Madam Mayor, fellow councillors, this administration, this council remains committed to supporting CAB. CAB will still continue to receive funding from this council, and it's worth noting that CAB as an organisation nationally receives 40% of its funding from local government and the vast majority from other sources. I'm sure Councillor Repton in a few minutes will go into a bit more detail about the opportunities that still remain open to CAB in terms of funding from this council. So it's wrong to give this impression that CAB will not exist in Derby. CAB will still continue to receive funding. What this is, of course, is an issue of reduction in funding. And I think a better way of displaying this city's, this council's support for not just CAB, because CAB are an essential part of the family of voluntary sector groups in our city, is this council, under successive administrations, has given millions and millions of pounds awarded to voluntary sector groups for their important work helping the most vulnerable people in our city. It is worth noting, crucially, that they were under very, very different times. National government policy was very much different. And I will say it again, because we seem to need to say it again, that austerity is national government policy. And it would be wrong to say simply this is an issue for Derby. I've got a list here of, and just a sample list, and you can get this on the website, of the impact of cuts to CAB across the country. Kent, Cumbria, Manchester loses 2 out of 3 citizen advice bureaus as a result of funding cuts. Walsall, Darlington, and in fact Newcastle. Newcastle is a really useful example because the Newcastle media are running stories saying Newcastle will be the only major city in the UK without a CAB. Hertfordshire Council formally decided to withdraw the annual grant they provide to support their CAB as a result of funding cuts. That's just a sample. This is happening across the country. Why? Derby doesn't run those other councils. What have we all got in common? Well, what we do have in common is, as local government, we are reliant on central government funding. Of all the services that local government provides up and down the country, it is funded from central government. We only use a small amount from our council tax. Now, historically, council tax was used for discretionary services. Since 2010, it has been government policy, austerity, to cut funding to public services. And I say this, Madam Mayor, as a country, we've got to make up our mind, because we've given a mandate to a government to implement austerity, and there are people in this chamber that hold that view. That's why I find it extraordinary, the points made by the Conservatives. If you speak to them, they'll say they believe in austerity. They believe in cuts in public spending. That's their government policy. That's the policy they support. But then in opposition, and you know, when you're in opposition, it's easy to make these points. They say the council shouldn't cut that. It's a complete contradiction. You can't say you believe in a national policy of cuts and then moan in this council chamber when councils like Derby, that are reliant on the very government funding cuts that are experienced by the government policy you support, are hit hard as a result. And these crocodile tears, Mr. Mayor, are very disappointing. It doesn't do anything for our local democracy, and I feel sorry for the groups out there, and we've got many people in the council chamber to hear this particular issue. It just is manipulated. It's misleading people to say you are somehow the champions of CAB when you've done nothing to support a Fair Deal for Derby campaign. This council has been very passionate about highlighting the impact of government cuts, one of councils up and down the country, and that's cross-party, may I add. Years of austerity, even Conservative councils are having to shut cabs across the country. The only difference is, Madam Mayor, is this government has listened to campaigns, but Conservative campaigns. It's worth reminding us that David Cameron awarded £300 million transitional fund to Conservative councils to lessen the impact of their government cuts. This government is receiving this council is receiving a fair deal. Local government is receiving a unfair deal. And it's absolutely vital that we've just got to put the blame exactly where it lies. If we're really going to have a constructive dialogue of standing up for public services, we've got to really have a proper exchange with this government. Because David Cameron is over the moon about this. He's getting his way. He's getting his cuts in public spending and getting community groups and councillors like the Tories blaming local councils. That just simply can't continue. So, Madam Mayor, I will finish on this note. This council, this is the important point I want to make, is this council remains committed to supporting citizens' advice in Derby in these tough financial times. And in better financial times, when austerity comes to an end, we will continue to increase that funding for CAB. Madam Mayor, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Banwaite. Councillor Repton.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. This is understandably an emotive issue that I, my Cabinet colleagues, my group and the Council have been wrestling with for many, many months. We have faced the unenviable task of having to balance the budget whilst legally having to protect statutory services for the most frail and vulnerable in the city. Derby is a small unitary council that has faced savage multi-million-pound cuts to all our budgets. Yet at the very same time, particularly in adult care, there is a massively increased demand for statutory services that we legally have to provide to the most frail and vulnerable in our community. We will have to absorb these additional demands for statutory services that we estimate will amount to a multi-million-pound additional bill. Derby City Council has a long and proud history of working with and investing in the local voluntary sector to support local communities. Over the past decade, we've invested a substantial sum of £21 million. The Labour Group's values and instincts would always have been to continue this investment were it not for the impossible position we've been put into by the multi-million-pound central government cuts. When the Ministry of Justice ended its £700,000 contract with CAB in 2012, the Council, despite cuts to our own funding, continued to fund free legal advice service in Derby via CAB. 3 years on, and millions of pounds of cuts to the Council's budgets later, we simply cannot carry on funding a discretionary service at the expense of statutory services. The CAB has been consulted with about the implications of the Council's budgets on a number of different occasions over the past year. They've had the opportunity to attend specific consultation meetings, complete the questionnaire and make representations over the course of many months. I know the Cabinet Member for Housing and Finance met in April 2015. I met with the CAB and the CEO later that same year, 2015. The Acting Strategic Director met them on the 16th of September. The Leader and Deputy Leader of the Council met the CEO and other representations on the 14th of January 2016. We explained in great detail the real problems that we had to continue the funding of CAB and other voluntary sector groups, their service users, at the same level as previously. The Council understands and is sympathetic to the situation CAB finds itself in, and we shall support groups to seek alternative funding wherever possible. Those people with eligible social care needs shall be assessed and their needs provided for. We are working with our NHS colleagues to ensure health funding continues to be targeted as effectively as possible to minimise impact. Despite the mitigations, we do not underestimate that there shall be negative impacts of this decision. This is the situation as it affects all voluntary sector groups, including the CAB in Derby. Sadly, there are many other councils throughout the length and breadth of the country that are having to make similar decisions about funding to CAB. According to reputable news sources, authorities such as Kent, Cumbria, Manchester, Walsall, Darlington, Newcastle, Herefordshire have all had to make considerable cuts to funding. The information that I have suggests that all those councils have been forced to dramatically reduce their funding. In some authorities, CAB fears that the funding will be removed altogether. As far as Derby is concerned, according to the declared financial reports from CAB, their funding to the 31st of March 2015 showed them receiving a total of 922,197. 922,197, which contained 200,000 from Derby City Council, which we sadly had to cut. You'll see from this that the element of funding from Derby City Council amounted to less than 25% of their total funding. It is worth also noting that the Council and the NHS are continuing to provide funding to CAB to a specialist advice and advocacy service. The funding was awarded for 2 years from 2015 and amounts to £205,000 each and every year. That will continue. I think this demonstrates that Derby City Council is continuing to fund aspects of CAB actively, but is not alone in the country in having to make very difficult decisions and cut some funding. Having said all this, I want to offer some hope about the future. As I have demonstrated, many councils have stopped providing grants to voluntary sector organisations years ago. And in recent years, CAB in particular throughout the country has had its funding reduced dramatically. In the years to come, when times are better and our local economy is strong, the council shall be funded from local income exclusively. Then I hope we'll be able to do more, as we have in the past, to support our voluntary sector colleagues, including CAB. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Repton. Councillor Evans, do you wish to speak? No. Okay, thank you. We'll move to the vote then on the amendment.
Madam Mayor, can we have a recorded vote, please? 10 minutes.
Yep.
Sorry, members, the IT isn't working, so I'll do it the old-fashioned way, and we'll just take a tally as we go along. It's on here. So, if members could please indicate, as I read out their names, whether they are for, against, or abstaining from the vote. Can you write them down as I go? Yeah, if you can.
Sorry, Madam Mayor, just for clarity, this is the vote on the amendment put forward by Councillor Graves.
Councillor Afzal. Councillor Anderson. Councillor Ashburner. For. Councillor Banwaite. Councillor Barker. For. Councillor Bayliss. Councillor Bolton. Councillor Kerr. For. Councillor Carr. Councillor Dinser. Councillor Eldred. Councillor Evans. Councillor Froggatt. Councillor Graves. Councillor Grimmadell. Don't worry. Councillor Harwood. Councillor Hassel. Councillor Heselgrave. Councillor Holmes. Alison Holmes. Councillor Matthew Holmes. Councillor Hudson. Councillor Hussain. Councillor Ingle. Councillor Jackson. Councillor Keith. Councillor Jangir Khan. Councillor Shiraz Khan. Councillor Marshall. Councillor Nater. Councillor Nawaz. Councillor Pegg. Councillor Poulter. Councillor Raju. Councillor Rawson. Councillor Repton. Councillor Ralston. Councillor Russell. Councillor Sandhu. Councillor Shankar. Councillor Skelton. Councillor Smale. Councillor Stanton. Councillor Turner. Councillor Webb. Councillor West. Councillor Whitby. Councillor Williams. Councillor Wood. Councillor Wright. and the Mayor of Derby, Councillor Winter. Should be 23. 26. Yeah, that makes sense, yeah. So they all want the master plan.
Madam Mayor, the outcome is that 26 votes against and 23 for, and on that basis the amendment is lost. We now need to move and vote on the substantive motion which is in the report, which is the Council notes the petition.
Right, can we vote now then, please? Right.
This is to support the details in the report. Yeah, just to note the petition.
Yeah.
We do because we've had an amendment, so we just need to vote the content of the report.
Yeah.
Yes, you are, because we've had a vote on the amendment, so yes.
Right, okay.
So for the sake of clarity, members are now being asked to vote on the recommendation as printed in the report, which states that Council notes the petition.
Those in favour in the motion as printed.
And yourself, yes?
Yeah.
Yeah, and those against?
Those against?
Okay, right, so...
Okay. Right. The recommendation is as printed. Thank you.
Item 13. Keep going.
Item 13 is the schedule of meetings. Councillor Bayliss.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and congratulations on your election, by the way. I'd wish to formally move a couple of meeting date changes. Regenerating our City Scrutiny Board, I wish to move the 13th of December meeting to the 29th of November, and the 21st of March meeting to the 21st of February. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Subject to those amendments, is everybody happy with the schedule of meetings?
Yes.
Right. Item 14, contract procedure rules.
Agreed?
Yeah. Move as printed? Agreed? Thank you. Item 15, Members Steering Group. Councillor Wood. Yeah.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and may I add my congratulations to those of my colleagues. I've seen 46 mayor makings. This was the first that ended up in the cathedral, and I think that's a good precedent, and I certainly like the way that we had such an inclusive homily from the Dean, which embraced people with no faith, and I think that's quite important. To the business in hand, the Members' Services Working Party, Members' Steering Group, I welcome these reforms. I think it's certainly high time that this was done. It's had a long history. I chaired it at one time, under a Labour administration, I might add, and I think it can achieve some great things with these reforms. Having said that, I would make one suggestion, and not going to put down an amendment or anything like that, just leave it for the leadership to consider that having made these new arrangements, it might be sensible to allow members of groups to nominate a substitute on this particular group. I understand why we don't do that on constitutional committees, because it could cause a hijack. It works very well in other authorities up and down the country, and I would just leave it for the leader and in consultation with other leaders of groups to take that up, because I think that would be a very good way forward to administer the work of this group. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Van Wyk.
Yes, Madam Mayor. Apologies, I believe my deputy said I said Mr. Mayor when I was speaking earlier, so I will get used to it, Madam Mayor. Madam Mayor, that's an excellent suggestion from Councillor Wood, and we accept that. So on that basis, you have asked, Constitutional Services have asked the various groups to put forward their champion. So our designated champion for the Labour group will be Councillor Barbara Jackson, and the substitute will be our Chief Whip, Councillor Jack Stanton. Thank you.
Any other comments on this? Right.
The motion now, Councillor Barker.
Right. Item 21 is a motion from Councillor Barker.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and may I offer my congratulations as well. But I did give you a bit of a kiss earlier, didn't I? So that counts. Oh, sorry. Yes. Yeah. Madam Mayor, Council, I rise today to propose this motion in relation to the constitution of the Standards Committee. For those of you that were here, you will recollect that the new standards regime came into effect on the July in 2012, when legislation brought by the government made councils responsible for their own standards. Council debated the issue on the 23rd of May 2012 as to both the codes of conduct, the procedural protocols, and subsequently the make-up of the new Standards Committee. Previously, the committee was made up under the old regime of 3 councillors of the major parties, 4 independent members with an independent chair. The legislation took away the independent chair and voting rights of the independent members. We therefore, in the debate of the 12th of July 2012, opted for adoption of a new code of conduct with new rules for disclosable interests, which was the requirements of the legislation, the new rules on disclosable pecuniary advantages or interests, the appointment of independent persons still required as a feature of the legislation, but without the right to vote, and a move from 3 to 5 members, which gave the flexibility for necessarily establishing a committee following the recommendation from the monitoring officer and the independent person, should that be required. As this formed part of the Council's committee system, the principles of Whitcomb rules were applied to the political colour of the Council appointments, and it is that issue which I wish to address today. The system has now been in place for nearly 4 years. Luckily, and owing to the professional conduct of most councillors, and I say most councillors, complaints reaching the Standards Committee are few and far between. I know and acknowledge the part played in that by the investigating phase carried out by the monitoring officer and the independent member approved for that particular case. However, in the early days of the new scheme, it was difficult to assimilate what was previously the strong decision and making of responsibility of the independent persons into the system with what is now an advisory role from those independent persons, when it was expected that the elected members would take cognizance of the decision or advice of those independent members. Whilst we cannot speak of individual cases that have appeared before the subcommittee over that 4-year period, I think it fair to say that having grappled with the weight of opinion gained from independent members on occasions, the main conclusion drawn have been fair. However, it is realised that on occasions the complainant may well still feel aggrieved in that the decision-making process seems to have been somewhat tainted by political loading of the particular group, especially when the member subject to the complaint is of the same political party. Now, whether that be true or not, and I am not advocating that it is, that is a perception that is out there. There is no doubt about that. And so, therefore, we are trying to address that before the Council today. Raising this issue and viewing the 2014 Council Chamber following the result of a case, I believed it was seen as a personal attack and therefore intransigent as to the arguments set in it. That said, we both know that my group and that of the Liberal Dems we withdrew our support of the Standards Committee at that time, and it has not taken part in that process since that time. That was not an easy decision to make, nor probably a wise one, as now the public's perception is even greater of concern in relation to what is now seen as an undemocratic system by which councillors are now judged by their peers on their conduct in public office. In reviewing our stance on this issue and seeking an open and demonstrable system of standards, it is what we have now brought before this Council today. If we are to seek a democratic and trusted system of our own accountability, I believe it necessary to remove the burden of the Widdicombe rules in this instance when applied to that committee. The public do not understand the reasons for Widdicombe rules. They merely see the outcome of it. And therefore, that, whilst it may well be in the concept of local government, as I say, the public do not understand why it is applied in this particular instance. To regain the trust and to maintain the cooperation and excellent work done by both officers and the independent persons that are in post, I seek Council's approval to exempt the Standards Committee from the Widdicombe rules and to amend the Constitution accordingly in line with that proposed in the motion. Namely, that the Standards Committee consist of one councillor from each of the major political recognised groups and other than the Mayor and the Leader of the Council. Maintain 2 independent persons and 2 cooperative members as well. Acceptance of this proposal gives an open, balance and demonstrable democracy in relation with matters raised by the public in the conduct of councillors and in the complaint system. It is in the interest of everyone in this chamber to have a robust, democratic and trusted system of standards, which both the public and we can demonstrate is fair to all concerned. And accordingly, with respect, I seek your approval for this, and I move.
Thank you, Councillor Barker. Do you wish to speak now, Councillor Poulter?
Madam Mayor, if I can formally second the motion and reserve my right.
Okay, thank you. Does anybody else wish to debate on this? Councillor Skelton.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I would just add my voice to this debate and agree with what has been said so far. I was a member of the Standards Committee under the old system, where we had one member from each party, plus independents and an independent chair. We didn't, thankfully, get too many complaints to deal with, but those we did deal with, we dealt with in a non-party political basis, and it was a fair process and demonstrably fair. It had the confidence of all councillors, and I believe also of members of the public. And I think any move towards how it was is a good one. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Skelton. Councillor Shanker.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And thank you, Councillor Barker, for bringing this motion, if only if it is to correct what you call public perception of the current standards regime and also the public's understanding or lack of understanding of the current regime. I think what we really need to start with here is a bit of a reality check, in all honesty. The opposition groups continue to accuse Labour of misusing the current system, but let's just take a step back. Opposition groups for a number of years have refused to participate in this committee, forcing Labour councillors to carry out the work with the independent members on that committee to take all the burden of the work needed over the last couple of years. Opposition groups then continue to put up spurious complaints. About half of the complaints in the last year have either been by members of the opposition or members of the opposition groups who are seeking election as candidates. The opposition continue to claim the Whittingham Standards Committee system doesn't work. But how would they know it doesn't work when they don't partake in the committee? I just find it unbelievable. Let me directly now put a few points about the Tory group themselves. The masters of hypocrisy here. Absolute masters of hypocrisy. Firstly, they refused to put members forward, as I've already mentioned, to the committee. And it was their leader's comments, we don't recognise the Standards Committee. That's what he said, that's what he's got up and said in this chamber, time after time, he said it publicly in the press. But yet, when they want to complain about a member of the Labour group, they use that committee. On one hand, they don't recognise it, then they use that very committee to make their complaints. And it gets worse. It gets a lot worse. When a member of their group, and I won't name any members here, but when a member of their group is being investigated or complaints been put forward, they then all of a sudden nominate somebody to the group. And why is that? Let's have a look at the papers. Let's get the paperwork. They get the paperwork, and when they know they can't defend the indefendable, somehow or another their member can't make it to that meeting. We can't attend. Absolute hypocrisy. And also, let's just go back to 2012, as Councillor Barker has already alluded. He talked about changes in legislation, but what he forgot to mention, it was the Tory government making these changes to the legislation at the time. They wanted to get rid of the old Standards Committee and in fact did, which was broadly considered to be fair and effective. It's because of Tory legislation that the voting rights of independent members was taken away. The fact the independent members could chair the committees, that was taken away by Tory legislation. And it's because of Tory legislation that the requirement to have a Standards Committee, in fact we don't need to have a Standards Committee, and that again was Tory legislation. The Lib Dems, mind you, although they supported the changes, it was a coalition government, they also said they don't recognise the Standards Committee, and in fairness to them, they've been consistent in that line. They've not recognised the Standards Committee, and they've not been making spurious complaints. UKIP. Well, they complain about the Standards Committee. They've not been on the Standards Committee, but what's the point? They've not been or taken their place on any committee in the last year, not attending any committee or taking their seat up, playing a role that they should be on this council. Complete disregard to the whole process of this council, let alone just the one committee of the Standards Committee. They've repeatedly exploited the system by raising complaint after complaint against Labour members, most of which were dismissed by the independent members before they even got to be considered by councillors. It is their conduct which has shown the Standards Committee has been undermined and exploited, and with their councillors and candidates using it as a political football to score cheap political points, just so they can publish it in their newsletters. I agree that there are improvements that can be made, and I'll take this away. I'll speak to the monitoring officer and we will propose changes at a future meeting.
Thank you, Councillor Shanker. Councillor Matthew Holmes.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. May I also add my congratulations to everyone else on your appointment. I'm sure you're going to have a fantastic year. We talk about this group disengaging from the Standards Committee, and there was a reason for that. Yes, it's true. Under the Localism Act, it changed things. Former Councillor Harvey Jennings and myself I believe, made the decision in consultation with the other opposition at the time, group leaders, that we wanted to retain the Standards Committee. We felt that it was very important to keep that process, mainly because it's the main process for not just councillors within this chamber to make a complaint or raise an issue with a fellow councillor that they feel does need to go towards the committee. But more importantly, it's a way for the public to see not just transparency, but that they have confidence that there is a system which is transparent, that any complaints that they raise can be dealt with in a fair and open way, knowing that the outcomes are not just fair, but are perceived to be fair. Now, this group does not make complaints, very rarely makes complaints. And when it does, it's true, you know, those people on the standards committees will know we do not make complaints very often. When we do, they're going to be legitimate complaints, whether they are upheld or not, but they are legitimate. We do not use, in the way that you describe opposition, using this as a political football. I can genuinely say that. I believe that's absolutely true to say. Well, you may disagree, but I believe that I am right. Now, you said, Councillor Shanker, no, well, I believe I am right. Councillor Shanker mentions various aspects of creating what I can see as a firewall to protect his councillors from complaints. Well, isn't that confirmation that raises suspicion that you are using it in a way that you perceive to be protecting your group from complaints, rather than it being something which should be transparent and open? Now, I'm not, like Councillor Barker, suggesting that politically loading the Standards Committee leads to decisions which are political. I believe that the members of the Standards Committee should take each complaint on its own merits and make a decision. For me to suggest, for example, that you're using it in a political way would probably end up me being brought before the Standards Committee, so I'm not going to do that. But the reason why we didn't recognise it, Councillor Shanker, is that you changed it, to use Widdicombe, for no good reason. Public perception needs to be that this mechanism is open, transparent. The way to do that would be to do exactly what we're proposing here. One member, one recognised political party. That's something to embrace, not something to oppose. By opposing it, it raises suspicion, whether it's true or not, that that Standards Committee could, and I'm not saying it is, could be used as a political firewall to protect the ruling group. I think you'll make a huge mistake by not accepting this motion. I think it's a very fair way forward. We would be willing to fully re-engage with the Standards Committee under those circumstances. The public would support it. It would be open and transparent, and it's the right thing to do.
Thank you, Councillor Holmes. Councillor Poulter, do you wish to speak?
Madam Mayor, I can't really add to what Councillor Holmes and Councillor Barker have said, other than just to remind the Cabinet Member and the Council that we have the power here tonight to help the public to be reassured that we are a good council, we are honourable and decent councillors, and if there is an issue, it can be dealt with in a suitable manner. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Banwaite.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I think there's a consensus here that the current process needs to be improved. You know, we're committed to do that. As Councillor Shanker has made it absolutely clear, the process we have followed is based upon government guidelines. The system, the process that the City Council has operated in the last 4 years is that recommended under the Local Government Act. It works very, very well in other parts of the country. We have tried it. We have a situation where it's been abused by one party, and it's UKIP. You know, the evidence is there. They talk about saving taxpayers' money, but they use a process which ties up council resources. And then they play games by inviting members of the media to exploit that. The very media, by the way, they accused of, was it media bullying today? Chris Deutsch wasn't here from Radio Derby to miss that, but according to UKIP, the media are bullying them. So, you know, this is part of the games they play. And I do recognise a degree of sincerity from Councillor Holmes, even though he had to reassure himself that he was right. I've never heard anybody say, well, actually, I've had a rethink and I could be wrong in a politician, but he's honest about that. There is a desire to make improvements to this process. It can't continue the way it is. Councillor Shank has absolutely made clear, let's not rush into that. Let's wait, let's see those options come forward, and the options you've presented is clearly one alternative. I think there could be others. And I think it makes absolute sense that we give Councillor Shanker, as our Cabinet Member for Governance, to seek legal advice, to look at other options being used in other parts of the country, so we can make an informed choice. You know, clearly this is a Conservative motion, but you'd be blinkered to simply say this is the only motion that exists anywhere. We've got a monitoring officer with a massive experience. We're part of the local government network. Councillor Shanker is proposing to look at alternative models and bring them to this council chamber. I think that's only makes sense. It makes sense. So I would encourage you to not rush into this. Let's wait. Let's see those options, and then we can make a proper decision on those options. Thank you. I'll move to the vote, Madam Mayor.
Okay. Right. Thank you. Right. Shall we move to the vote on the motion? Those in favour? Thank you. Those against? Yeah.
26. The motion is lost.
Thank you. The motion is lost.
Madam Mayor, can I just draw your attention? I know you're new in the job, but shouldn't the mover of the motion have a right to reply?
Right, thank you. Item 16, constitutional appointments.
We have a number of changes. Would you like me to read them out?
Yes, please.
Madam Mayor, over the few minutes leading up to the commencement of full council, we've been notified of a number of changes. I'll just read those out for clarity. The Conservative vacancy on the Fire Authority is to be filled by Councillor Williams. The Conservative vacancy on the Derbyshire Development Plans Joint Advisory Committee to be filled by Councillor Wood. On supporting Derby's Workforce Overview and Scrutiny Board, the Conservative nominee for chair is now Councillor Barker, with Councillor Alison Holmes remaining nominated as an ordinary member of the committee. On the Health and Wellbeing Board, the Conservative nomination of Councillor Smale is withdrawn and replaced by Councillor Hudson. On Audit and Accounts Committee, the Conservative nomination of Councillor Hudson is withdrawn and replaced by Councillor Smale. On Standards Committee, the Labour nominee for chair is now Councillor Shanker, with Councillor Jackson remaining as an ordinary member. Thank you.
Madam Mayor, I think there's just one other, if I may. Can we nominate Councillor Grimmadell for the War Memorial Village? It has to be a Shelliston Ward councillor. Okay.
Councillor Graves, you wish to speak?
Yes, Madam Mayor. I'm not going to take very long. The overview and scrutiny function of this council is under a lot of strain because of the austerity measures that obviously the Conservative government are imposing on the City Council. The number of officers available for overview and scrutiny have found it much more difficult over the years. And I'd like to offer an amendment which will not only help those officers, but it will also save the council a small amount of money in special responsibility allowances. I would like to propose that the number of overview and scrutiny boards are reduced to 3 to include the Corporate and Scrutiny and Government's Overview and Scrutiny Board. I put that to the council.
Thank you.
Madam Mayor, the amendment, if approved, the motion will read as follows. To approve the constitutional appointments for 2016-17, subject to the number of overview and scrutiny boards being reduced to 3, to include the Corporate Scrutiny and Governance Overview and Scrutiny Board. Would you like me to read that again? to approve the constitutional appointments for 2016-17, subject to the number of overview and scrutiny boards being reduced to 3, to include the Corporate Scrutiny and Governance Overview and Scrutiny Board.
If they decide to do
Madam Mayor, can I just advise full council that if this is approved, we will have to adjourn whilst we look at the Widdicombe proportionality allocations for the committees. We have to ask him, does he have a second?
Yeah. Do you have a seconder, Councillor Graves? Councillor Wright, thank you.
So Councillor Graves, does he want to speak? Does Councillor Graves want to speak?
Do you want to speak, Councillor Graves?
Nothing further to add, really, Madam Mayor. This is obviously a cost-saving exercise. It does allow us to have a little bit more money in the coffers, and it would be sensible for the officers of the council that run the overview and scrutiny. If this council is serious about saving some money and serious about the issues that we have with austerity, this is just a small measure that we can implement in this council. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Wright, do you wish to speak now or reserve your right to speak? Thank you. Councillor Kerr?
It's our opinion that the scrutiny function within this council is already fairly weak and fairly toothless, and to reduce the number of scrutiny boards further without potentially increasing the number of meetings, which would then leave us with the same amount of officer work, I think would be a negative. And given that we've only just got the number of places that we have to fill on the board enables the majority of backbenchers to have that role, I think to take away the opportunity to be a backbencher with a scrutiny role would be a negative as well. So both from the point of view of scrutiny function and for the breadth of experience that councillors have, I think this would be a bad suggestion, and I encourage people to vote against it.
Thank you, Councillor Kerr. Councillor Banwaite.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The Labour Group will be supporting Councillor Kerr's excellent suggestion. But again, this is another example of UKIP being destructive in this council chamber. The facts are, the one way you can help this this council, Councillor Graves, is by actually doing your function as a councillor. Your attendance at overview scrutiny, I'm not sure how many meetings he's been to. Has he? None. You talk about gravy.
Point of order. Point of information, Madam Mayor. I'm not actually on any overview and scrutiny.
Thanks, Councillor Graves, for helping me out there and stating that really good fact, which I wasn't going to raise. Yeah, well, you've confirmed it yourself because you haven't put yourself forward to do the basic job as a council. As a councillor, have you, Councillor Graves? You talk about a waste of taxpayers' money, and I think you put literature out about gravy trains, and you are on one big gravy train yourself, on one big ego trip, aren't you? And your display this morning was absolutely despicable, wasn't it? You isolated yourself, and I think it's about time the people of Derby saw exactly what you were about, Councillor Graves, a disgusting, despicable individual, Councillor Graves, and that will be exposed to the public.
Point of order, Madam Mayor. Point of order. I would ask the Leader of the Council to withdraw those remarks. Are you going to allow this to happen in this council chamber?
Right, okay.
I couldn't hear what...
Okay. Yeah, Councillor Graves, can you tell me which CP rule has been broken, please?
I would take advice from yourself, Madam Mayor, because I haven't got the CP numbers in front of me. However, Madam Mayor, it is not customary to abuse members in this council chamber, and that was severe abuse. I put forward I put forward a sensible motion.
Councillors, please. Please, can we quieten down a bit, please? Thank you. Sorry, Councillor Groves, you still missed what you said.
Sorry, Madam Mayor, I didn't hear that.
Sorry, we missed what you said.
Yeah, like it's customary practice not to... I mean, I put forward a perfectly sensible motion, and all that's happened is you get the usual rhetoric and bully boy tactics from the leader of the council. And it is not right and proper to abuse members in such a way that he did. And he really needs to apologise for that.
Right.
Yeah, okay.
So I think
Thank you. Councillor Graves, if you can't give me a CP number, then I will move on and allow Councillor Banwaite to finish.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Obviously, I need to use the scrutiny board
64
process. Sorry, I meant the standards board. Sorry about that.
Okay, all right, okay. Have you carry on? Have you finished? Yeah. Well, carry on then, Councillor Banwaite.
So, Madam Mayor, I was making the point that, as Councillor Kerr has said, the workload is already stretched with the number of committees we've got at the moment. UKIP don't contribute to that, so the best way they can contribute is actually taking part in that, doing their job as councillors, as they should, and not simply taking the money, the allowance that they get, and doing no work for it. So, Madam Mayor, this Labour group can't support this amendment or motion, I think, Madam Mayor, and we move to the vote. Thank you.
it's Councillor Stanton, if you want to hear him.
Councillor Stanton, do you want to say something before we move to the vote?
Just briefly, Madam Mayor, I feel we've sort of got away from actually what this motion is about, which is a bit of an attack on the role of scrutiny itself. And I think the point has been made that UKIP don't engage with that process, and therefore I felt that enlightening them somewhat as to what that role is. It is, in fact, where a cross-party group come together to not just scrutinise, to form topic reviews, to look at things in a far more... On a night like tonight, we only see the council chamber when we're all sat in party groupings and the buns fly and it's all the grand theatre of this chamber. That's great, but actually there's a lot of hard graft that goes in on those wet midweek nights where we all sit for hours on end and actually look at policy, at the minutiae of policy, of making things better for this city. And there are a lot of contributions from the Conservatives, from the Lib Dems, that help enrich that process. They take part enthusiastically, all members do, in topic reviews, to look at call-ins. Sure, there's Widdicombe, we know that. Okay? Nothing's perfect, but it's where we get to have our say. And it's where a few of the members in this chamber, the less bombastic, the less flamboyant, get to actually contribute on the ground level. And it's where we do a lot of our work. So rather than talk about cutting money, let's talk about cutting value. There's a great deal of value of the overview and scrutiny function performed by councillors in this chamber and the officers who support them. And a lot of those recommendations go straight to the Cabinet. We review every Cabinet decision, topic reviews, call-ins, it all happens there. And so when we look at value for money, maybe if you don't just turn up to the 7 meetings a year where you get to have all the theatre, then maybe, just maybe, you'll provide a better deal for your residents. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Stanton. Councillor Wright, do you wish to speak?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. This is for Councillor who made a comment. He wasn't going to mention any names, but he mentioned UKIP. There's only 2 of us, or 3 of us now, but there's only 2 of us, so he didn't have to mention many names at all, did he? But this is what the problem's been in this chamber every time that I've come in. There's always been an attack on UKIP as a form of one person, and it's not, it's 2. And we're not all the same. So I'd just like to say to him, I'd attended every meeting the night, but the NHS said he wouldn't move my bed and me to the meetings and back again. As you know, I had a stroke last year, and that's where I've been ever since, recovering from that. and I tried my hardest to attend as many meetings as I could, but I couldn't get to every one of them. It's just impossible for me. I can't walk, I have to get a lift down here. I've been stopped from driving because my eyesight has gone as well. They said they'd get me this in 14 font, but they haven't completely. They put me an handle in which to stand, and I'm very grateful for that, and they have made a few benefits here for me, I've noticed. But I'm now beginning to walk by myself. I did before, but I fell over and but since the last meeting here, I've had a hip operation, which has compounded the issue of me getting about. I have to rely on other people, which I've never done before in my life, and it's getting very hard. But yes, I'd attend every meeting when I was fit. I come to every meeting I possibly could. You know, and I don't like coming to this chamber to sit here and have criticism when I'm not that person that they're talking about. And it happens every time, and it's about time this council chamber stopped all this going at each other and concentrate on what's important. It's quite simple. I'm on the boards. I don't know what I'm on at the moment, but I've been put on a few. I know I'm on overview and scrutiny. I also know I'm on licensing. I was on planning before I left for this at the end of the last session, but now it's suddenly changed. So I can only say what I'm on. Meetings, if it comes, the email's not working. So I can only come to the meetings that I know about, and as yet I've not been informed of any meetings. If it wasn't for Councillor Grave, may I say, I wouldn't have known about it today. So, you know, let's pack up this bickering and stuff and get on with the job of serving the people of Derby.
Thank you, Councillor Wright.
Thank you.
Thank you. And I'm sure that we all hope that you have a speedy recovery. Can we vote on the motion, please? Amendment, sorry.
Those in favour?
Those in favour?
Okay.
Thank you. Those against? Okay. It's the amendment is lost. Thank you. Right, now we move on to votes to determine several vice chairs.
Do you want to speak
Right.
before?
Sorry.
Councillor Evans has just put his hand up.
To find out what he wants to speak about.
Yeah, please, Chair. Yeah. Right, okay. Okay, before we move on then, Councillor Evans has got another...
Wishes to speak.
Do you wish to speak?
Wish to propose a second amendment to item 16.
Okay.
Okay?
Yeah.
I submit to this chamber for consideration a second amendment to item 16. No doubt all the chamber members are all too aware of the extremely tight budgets and subsequent cutbacks. With this in mind, I believe the special responsibilities payments to all vice chairs is not essential and should be removed forthwith. We need to show Derby we really are all in it together and lead by example. Then let's show Derby we will apply austerity to ourselves and do the honourable and decent thing. I just need the piece of paper with it on that's just gone. And do the honourable and decent thing subject to the special responsibility allowance for all vice chairs being removed with immediate effect. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Evans.
It's effectively it's better than...
Miss Madam Mayor, just for the sake of clarity, if the amendment is approved, the motion will read as follows. To approve the constitutional appointments for 2016-17, subject to the special responsibility allowance for all vice chairs being removed with immediate effect. In my capacity as monitoring officer, I am conscious that there are a number of special responsibility allowances that members receive, but also that there's a number of uncontested vice chairs that are detailed within the substantive documentation. And they're therefore going to grant a dispensation to all members so that there can be a free and frank debate on this amendment.
Do we have a seconder? Thank you.
Would you like to speak?
Right, okay. Okay. Right. Shall we move straight to the vote on the amendment? Yeah. All those in favour?
Well, Councillor Graves has reserved his right to speak, so does he actually want to speak?
Do you actually want to speak, Councillor Graves?
No.
No, no.
Right, okay. So those in favour?
Okay. Those in favour of the amendment?
Yeah. Those against?
Thank you. Those against? Thank you. The amendment is lost. Thank you. We need to vote now on the Vice Chair of Integrating Communities Board. We've got two contenders, Councillor Poulter or Councillor Skelton. Those in favour of Councillor Poulter? Okay. Thank you. Those in favour of Councillor Skelton? Thank you. Councillor Skelton is appointed as Vice Chair. Vice Chair of Regenerating Our City Board, we have the contenders are Councillor Hassel or Councillor Nater. Those in favour of Councillor Hassel? Thank you. Those in favour of Councillor Nater? Councillor Nater is appointed. Vice Chair of Planning Control Committee, the contenders are Councillor West or Councillor Wood. Those in favour of Councillor West? Okay. 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 Thank you. Those in favour of Councillor Wood? Thank you. Councillor West is appointed. Vice Chair, excuse me, Vice Chair of Audit and Accounts Committee, Councillor Ashburner or Councillor Harwood. Those in favour of Councillor Ashburner? Okay. Yeah. Thank you. And those in favour of Councillor Harwood? Thank you. Councillor Ashburner is appointed. Thank you. We go to item 17, Chairs of Neighbourhood Boards. As we've had no nominations received, we need to receive nominations and perhaps even vote. We'll do this in order. We'll start with Abby, the Chair of Abbey Ward.
Madam Mayor.
Could I nominate Councillor Hazelgrave, please?
Okay. And Vice Chair? There are no Vice Chairs? Okay.
So just do Chair.
Just, right, okay. Okay. Alice Street is...
Councillor Hassel.
Oh.
Alveston?
Okay.
Madam Mayor, for Alveston, I nominate Councillor Paul Bayliss.
Councillor Evans?
Madam Mayor, for Alveston, I nominate Councillor Alan Graves.
Right, so yeah. We'll put that to the vote then. Those in favour of Councillor Bayliss? Thank you. Those in favour of Councillor Graves? Right, so... Councillors, please.
Arboretum?
Councillor Bayliss is Chair of Alveston. Arboretum?
Madam Mayor, we nominate Councillor Nawaz, and that's obviously not contested.
Right,
We
okay.
can just move on.
Blakereeves?
Madam Mayor, I nominate Councillor Nater.
Councillor Wright wishes to speak, Madam Mayor.
Okay. Councillor Wright, you wish to speak?
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. I'd like to nominate Councillor Rawson for Chair of Derwent Board.
Right. Okay. Right, can we just finish off Blakereeves first, please? Right.
Madam Mayor,
Right,
can we just
sorry.
clarify if we're talking about Derwent now?
No, we're
Sorry.
talking about Blakereeves, yeah, sorry. Right, is it Councillor Nawaz? Oh, right, sorry, yeah, Councillor Nater for Blakereeves. Bolton?
Councillor Rajit Banwait.
Thank you. Chatterston?
Councillor Smale.
Okay, we'll take a vote then. For Chatterston, Councillor Winter? Okay, Councillor Smale.
It's Councillor Winter.
Thank you. It's Councillor Winter, thank you. Chellaston?
Councillor Ingle.
Okay. Darley? Now, we come to Derwent. Councillor Wright, you nominated Councillor Rawson.
Councillor Hudson.
Right. Okay, let's vote then. For Derwent, Councillor Rawson. Who's in favour of Councillor Rawson? Okay. Thank you. Councillor Hudson. Okay. Councillor Rawson. Little over.
Councillor Carr.
Right, Councillor Carr. Mackworth.
Right, Councillor Pegg.
Micklover.
That's me, Councillor Matthew Holmes. Yeah, I am sure. had to cross it out. You'll be in trouble.
I take it that's not a serious... Is it a serious one? Right. Normanton. Councillor Dinser. Right. Oakwood.
Councillor Wood.
Sinn Féin.
Councillor Schenker.
Spondon.
Councillor Ralston.
Thank you, that's it. Right, item 18, appointments to outside bodies.
So, I've got some amendments.
Okay. Yes, please.
Madam Mayor, in the minutes leading up to the full council, we've received a number of amendments. Councillor Bolton is the Labour nomination to be reappointed with her existing term expires at the end of this week on the Gilbert, Wilmot and Beresford charity. The Conservative nomination of Councillor Ingle to both Derby Hospitals Trust and Derbyshire Healthcare Foundation Trust is withdrawn. On the War Memorial Village, Councillor Grimmadell has been nominated. On Spondon Relief in Need charity, Councillor Poulter has been additionally nominated, so there will now need to be a vote to determine whether Councillor Poulter or Mr Michael Winfield be appointed.
Madam Mayor, can I just point out that I am currently on that charity and I'm due for renewal, and that's the reason why I'm nominated again this time.
Madam Mayor, just for clarity, we have two votes on this agenda item. The first one is, I've just already indicated, is the vote between Councillor Poulter or Mr Michael Winfield for the Spondon Relief in Need charity. The second vote that is required this evening is the East Midlands Museum Service, and that is a vote between Councillor Grimmadell or Councillor Rawson.
Okay, the Spondon Relief in Need charity, we've got Councillor Poulter or Michael Winfield. Those in favour of Councillor Poulter? Thank you. Those in favour of Mr Winfield? Is that Mr Winfield?
Yes.
Yeah. Mr Winfield is appointed.
And then the East Midlands Museum Service.
Right, it's the East Midlands Museum Service. So those in favour of Councillor Grimmadell? Thank you. Those in favour of Councillor Rawson? Right, okay. Councillor Rawson is appointed. Right. Item 19. Oh, sorry.
Are we sort of approving the remainder of the appointments in Council in item 18? Yes,
Item 18. Oh,
no,
yeah.
they're all, those were the only two votes, so we
Right,
just need to
okay.
ask Council that they just approve the remainder of the appointments.
Right.
And calculate number 18.
Right. In number 18, do we approve
The remainder of the appointments.
the remainder of the appointments with Derby Hospitals NHS Foundation Trust or Derbyshire Healthcare NHS Foundation Trust?
Yeah, and all the remainder is printed, but Councillor Carr.
Councillor Kerr.
I haven't checked through all these lists, but certainly the LGA General Assembly, we should be having 4 members, and there are only 3 names on the list. I don't know if there are others where we haven't got a full list, which might just hold things up later on in the year.
Madam Mayor, we can only present the nominations as we've received them. We can go through the list line by line if members wish. Madam Mayor, if it's easier, group leaders can come back to either myself or the head of democracy with the nominations following the conclusion of this meeting, if that makes it easier.
Yeah. Right, item 19, attendance at annual conferences. Can we move it as printed? Yeah. Right, we have a late item for licensing. Councillor Shankar.
Thank you again, Madam Mayor. I'm sure all reasonable-minded members will agree with me that it is only right and proper for Derby City Council to regularly review our policies, procedures and practices to ensure that we have the best governance arrangements to support the work of our officers and indeed as elected members. An area that I believe we can make improvements is taxi licensing. This is a vitally important part of our regulatory services role. This is why I'm seeking the support of Council today to instigate a review into the taxi licensing subcommittee decision-making processes and procedures. The aim of this is to ensure this authority's taxi licensing regime remains as fair, consistent and transparent as possible. I hope to embark on a comprehensive review with full public and trade consultation as highlighted in the report and the attached timescale. So I'd urge full Council support of this paper. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Shankar. Does anybody wish to speak? Councillor Barker.
Madam Mayor, thank you for this opportunity. Having heard what Councillor Shankar says, and taxi licensing being quite close to my heart over the years that I've been involved in this council, I do welcome a regular review of our policies, and it would seem to me that this seems to be one of the most comprehensive reviews that we have ever undertaken, rather than just tinkering on the edges as different legislative nuances come in. So I note it's only a consultation at this stage, and I would welcome the opportunity to discuss the matter with the Cabinet Member in due course. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Barker. Anybody else wish to make a comment? Councillor Kerr.
I'm sorry, I haven't had an amendment sheet. We don't seem to have been provided with them today, but I would like to propose an amendment. In the light of discussion we have had earlier today about looking not too narrowly at proposals for change, but enabling a broader view of looking at things as we're looking at in terms of standards. So my proposal is to, under recommendation 2.2, to have an option C, other proposals assessed by officers as meeting regulations and to be credible. And this would mean that other people who have more knowledge than I do of licensing, because it's not a committee that I have sat on, whether from the trade or from councillors here or from officers, could put forward a proposal that would meet our legislative requirements and might be better than point the options A or B. I'm not saying there is anything better, but I think it just opens out the options, and it might mean that we don't miss something which could be a better solution than is currently being presented in this paper. I very much welcome this sort of discussion about the way we organise our administration, but I'd just like to broaden it out to enable it to be as full as necessary. So my proposal was 2.2, option C, other proposals assessed by officers as meeting the regulations and to be credible.
Thank you, Councillor Kerr. Does anybody else wish to speak on this?
Councillor Shankar, I think.
Councillor Shankar?
Is it seconded? Okay. Thank you again, Madam Mayor. Whilst I understand the spirit in Councillor Kerr's proposed amendment, I don't think really it adds anything else to this report, and it won't really be helpful at all in undergoing the review that I'm proposing here. A number of options have already been mentioned in the report, and I think it's important we concentrate on those options and move ahead with this review as quickly, but with the full consultation, as I've already mentioned. I understand the spirit of what she's saying, but I don't think it will help this process at all.
Thank you. Any other comments? Okay, let's move to the vote then.
So vote on the recommendations as printed. Vote on the recommendations as well. Yeah, I can vote on the amendment.
We need to vote on the amendment.
Right, okay. Right. I think we need to vote on the amendment first. Those in favour of the amendment? Okay, those against? Right. Right, the amendment is lost. Let's vote on the recommendation as printed. Those for? Thank you. Those against? Okay, thank you. Item 20, complaint about a councillor.
Philip Sunderland.
Yeah, okay. I'd like to invite Philip Sunderland to address the meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. This report arises from an issue raised by the independent members of the Standards Committee, which was then subsequently agreed by the active members that following a review of one of the members' activities, it was found that this particular member had revealed information given in confidence and damaged the reputation of the authority. It was subsequently found that, along with 11 other councillors, this particular councillor had not taken part in any information governance training. Beg your pardon. So what we're suggesting in the recommendation is that this should be included in the list of mandatory training that councillors should undertake within 8 weeks of being informed of the necessity to do so. So they're given a chance to complete the training, and it would be reported to councillor to the Standards Committee if they failed to do so. So really, with the power of the Chief Executive to give exemptions if under particular circumstances. But so what we're saying is that because this risk breach arose, we think that the mandatory training on information governance is clearly important for all members. And as 11 didn't complete it, we think everybody should do it as part of their training, as part of the council's training. Thank you.
Any comments? Councillor Wood?
Madam Mayor, can I just ask that the methods of training be reviewed, because there are a number of councillors who have found difficulty fulfilling their obligation, not because they didn't want to do the training, but because of the IT that they had didn't do it. Sometimes chalk and talk is preferable, and all I'm asking is that that be reviewed along with this recommendation to enable more people to do the training.
Thank you. Councillor Shanker.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you, Mr Sutherland, for presenting the report. Just to add to Councillor Wood's comments, I think it's quite easy to stand up here and say, let's look at the methods of training. But the methods available to members are the same methods, if not more, available to every single staff member of this authority. Every member of this council has got access to a group room with a standard desktop PC, which all these training policies, procedures or courses can be accessed on and completed. Additionally, on most laptop computers and tablets, this training can be done, but if members are experiencing difficulty with that, there's absolutely no excuse to undertake this training on a desktop PC in one of the group rooms. And in fact, I believe members get more support to do this training than staff members. There's a staff member who's always available to help members, whether it's an access issue or whether it's with the training itself. So there's no excuse whatsoever for any member of any party not to undergo this training. And I think it's wrong to suggest otherwise.
Councillor Ashburner.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and belated congratulations from me also. It's bad enough for councillors to waste time, but we're not being paid by the council. If officers are being subjected to these training regime, which is appallingly inefficient, that is a waste of resources of time. So I also suggest that they be reviewed and improved. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Ashburner. Councillor Froggatt.
Congratulations again for your mayoral duties. I'd like to say that I came on board this time last year. I had no IT equipment from the council whatsoever, and yet I managed on my laptop at home to complete all the courses. So, as Councillor Shanker has said, there is no excuse.
Thank you. Okay. Councillor Banwaite.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm a bit disappointed what Councillor Ashburner just said there. Look, we are a government body. We are local government. We're not just responsible for taxpayers' money, but we're responsible for delivering statutory services. And those statutory services, the vast majority, are about providing services to the most vulnerable people in our city. And legislation does change from time to time. Those services do improve from time to time, and it's absolutely vital that our knowledge is kept absolutely up to date. And that's what the training's about. It shouldn't be seen as a hindrance. I mean, we've just had the advice from an independent member that's just talked about the importance of training so that councillors don't fall foul of their duties and responsibilities and don't fall into the trap of making some very serious mistakes. That is absolutely a given. So I think it's absolutely important and vital that every member of this council chamber fulfills their responsibilities and undertakes that training. It's not difficult. The Labour group has an excellent record of doing that. I think the equipment that's available to Labour members is the same as anybody else. Some of them have iPads, some of them have desktop computers. But the most important thing is we have group rooms. You know, a considerable amount of resource and effort has gone into providing a group room for all the political parties. They've got IT equipment there, and it's next to member services. So at any time, councillors can come out and seek support from the officers. There's absolutely no excuse. And we've talked a great deal about credibility and the trust that residents put in us. How does it look as if we're actually saying, no, actually, you know, the training needs to be reviewed, or the training's too difficult, or iPads aren't working, our computers aren't working? And I mean, this is not the Stone Ages, Councillor. I know you've been on the council a long time, but you know, technology is there and available for everybody. And to simply say that, it almost sounds like an excuse, because you've had ample time to do that training, and to simply say at the 11th hour, well, the IT equipment's not available. We are committed as an administration to make governance a priority, and we are looking at options about how we can make sure that every councillor fulfils its responsibility to undertake its mandatory training. I can't see what the issue is with that, and Councillor Shanker will bring forward options about how that can be achieved. Thank you.
Councillor Williams.
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor. Congratulations on your appointment today. We didn't come here today asking to be let off because we haven't got the right equipment. What we've actually asked for is, due to some disabilities and due to equality, there are some members that cannot, for whatever reasons, and they don't have to disclose those reasons to us, find it difficult to use a computer, to spend that amount of time on it, and they have tried. And they found it difficult. And I've made this request so that all councillors, all 51 of us, can do that. I can stand here and say, I have done that training. I don't have that disability, but some people do. We're not trying to be funny and get out of it. We're trying to be equal. We're trying to make sure that everybody has the right things in front of them to be able to do the training. And if that means having it on paper, then so be it. We are a council that believes in equality and diversity, so please, let's not turn this into a you've got a laptop or you haven't. We're just asking for everybody to have the equal opportunity to be able to do it regardless of their disability.
Thank you, Councillor Williams. Councillor Matthew Holmes.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Yes, I just add to that to say, just please be open-minded with the method and how training could possibly be improved or presented in a different way. That's all we're asking. The majority, I'm sure, will be able to carry out the training in the way that Councillor Shanker has described, and some have already done so. This group will be supporting this. You know, we although I've had discussions with Janie Berry about this, technically it's not a legal requirement, but I understand that there's layers and it's not quite as black and white as that. This is something which the council does need to protect itself from, clearly, and that members themselves need to take responsibility for. So I understand that framework. But one thing I think which will spin out of this, and I'm keen actually to explore, because it is related to this, and certainly in the background that's pink paper, so we won't be discussing it now, but I think actually the first day that I had my training, 9 years ago now, and Stuart Leslie was doing it back then, and he spoke about the code of conduct and confidentiality and release of information, you know, and we all understand that. But he did talk about that under certain circumstances, members should be able to release what is confidential information if they believe that it's in the public interest and that it isn't politically motivated. And I think that's an area, I've read quite a lot of information about that. And you can do it, but you have to be right and you have to know that you're right to do it because you have to justify it after you've done it. That's something actually, whether it be training or advice, I think we should all actually seek, because it is our duty to be open, transparent, and certainly in opposition as well, where there's scrutiny that's needed, and where we deal with confidential information, there should be challenge. And where relevant and where fair, and where it's in the public interest, we should have the ability and know the boundaries and also have some guidance as to when we may be able to release that information. So I think that's something that I'd like to certainly explore, if it's via the 2.1 recommendation with you know, the chief executive and group leaders to define a list of mandatory training. Maybe it can work within that framework. But if not, we'll have a discussion outside of that. And I think that would be very welcome for us to understand, as councillors, related issues in regard to this training and our responsibilities of councillors. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Holmes. Councillor Anderson.
I just want to start off by congratulating you, Madam Mayor, on your appointment today. I have every confidence that you'll do a fantastic job. So those of you will have never heard me before, and that's lucky. But to start with, I just want to say that I've engaged in some training this week, and I found it to be extremely useful. It really opened my eyes to the realities of local government and particularly the strains that this local authority is under. And you know, there was something else that was highlighted that I found quite worrying. And I found this quite worrying, first of all, you know, as a councillor, but secondly, as a citizen of the city of Derby, but also as a father. So after coming out of the mandatory training, it was around safeguarding and our responsibility as corporate parents. And, you know, that's a responsibility that I think we should all take seriously. And, you know, she's left the room. Councillor Williams was in that room and, you know, she provided some excellent advice, and it was great to share a space with her and, you know, really understand that this is a non-partisan issue. But then to open the newspaper the next day, ready to read a story about an impending by-election, and to read that one of the members in here has said that they attended a boring training session. And, you know, it is Councillor Graves. I am sick to death of seeing the work that the council does undermined. And do you know what? As a citizen of Derby, the safeguarding work that goes on by this local authority keeps my family safe, keeps my sister, my daughter, it keeps people's families in here safe, it keeps our residents in our ward safe. And I don't want to see it undermined. And I think that that is a real unfortunate thing to have done. Equally, you know, I think that the residents of Alveston would be very interested to find out that their councillor believes that mandatory safeguarding and child safety is boring training. I mean, you know, I live in the city of Derby. I don't know what it's like in South Derbyshire, but here it matters to people and it's important. So let's just not undermine the training we're getting. And I know that councillors on that side, and as I mentioned, Councillor Williams and I had a wonderful discussion during the mandatory safeguarding. But I would invite people to really take things seriously and think about what their actions say to people outside.
Thank you, Councillor Anderson. Councillor Hussain.
Can I begin by congratulating you, Madam Mayor? Well done. To be honest, I've been a little bit disturbed by the contribution which Councillor Holmes made. He's trying to imply that whether you keep information confidential, which is meant to be confidential, you can use your individual discretion and leak it if you want to, because that's the understanding I've achieved after listening to him. And I think that's not the case at all, because I think you have the opportunity to perhaps challenge sometimes documents which are labelled as confidential, and if you don't agree with that label, you think it ought to be put into public domain, you can actually make a challenge then. But once it's been agreed that certain information needs to be regarded as confidential, then if you just leave it to the individual discretion of the councillors, nobody will have any confidence in anything which you think is being discussed in confidence, because there is no way an organisation of this size can actually discharge its public functions if nobody trusts anybody and is free for everyone to say, well, okay, I'll sit on this information and regard it as confidential, but I will leak the rest of it. That's dangerous, and I think we need to perhaps address that. The second issue around, and perhaps you might have not said this if you had all the proper training that has been available to the councillors in this chamber. Councillors do have individual responsibility, and if somebody's got specific needs, additional needs, and they are struggling to cope with the system it has been designed, it's up to them actually to draw it to the attention of democratic services or monitoring officer or even the chief executive to say, I am having this particular problem, can you please assist me? Not to say, well, I don't understand it, I'm not going to do it. And that's the attitude that that group over there has had for the last 12 months. Very, very few councillors have actually completed mandatory training. And if you happen to be sitting on a subcommittee or some sort of committee at the council and some member of the public challenges you, that you've not got basic training to be able to differentiate the statutory responsibilities from something. They can challenge you that you've been ill-equipped. You didn't understand the arguments, you don't have any understanding of the background because you've had no training. And anybody adjudicating on that would say, yes, proper training should be had when you're making crucial decisions. This applies to licensing, it applies to planning, and many, many other areas of what we deal with on a day-to-day basis. So I thought I'd set the record straight that you don't have a discretion, this is confidential to me, I'll leak the rest. It's not on.
Thank you, Councillor Hussain. Councillor Skelton.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. With a public authority like ourselves or any other public sector body, confidentiality does need to be balanced with the public interest, or the public interest to know things that are happening. And in this vein, I would commend to councillors to look at the website of Public Concern at Work, which may well prove quite enlightening. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Barker.
Thanks, Madam Mayor. We seem to have gone a little bit off kilter here, as far as I'm concerned. I thought we was debating the fact that we ought to be doing the mandatory training, or whatever the training is, whether mandatory or not. I have to say that to this council, and I accept everything that Councillor Shankar has said in respect of the equipment available, but the last 4 meetings, to my knowledge, of the member steering group, and I know Councillor Jackson's here and has chaired that, I have raised the issue of the ability for all councillors to be able to access readily the electronic packages that are available. Now, I accept they are in the council room that we all have. A lot of people work for a living, including Labour members as well. And so therefore, oh, well, I didn't mean it quite like that, but I'll accept it. The problem being, of course, that they can't readily get into the council chamber at all hours of the day and are not there like the staff members are in relation to being able to give them tuition, how to get into the equipment, how to get onto these things and everything. When you do get onto them, and you do the information governance package, for example, there is something, my recollection is something like about 42 pages of information that you've got to go through, which if you're reading it properly takes something like an hour to an hour and a bit. And then at the end of that, there is an examination of which you've got to get 80%, I think it is. And I've done it 3 times, and I've ended up with 78% on all. I'm doing something wrong somewhere. But I keep getting 78%. and unfortunately, and even if I reach that magic 80%, then it's a matter of logging it. And I mean, Councillor Williams didn't mention it, but I know that she did the training some time back and sat there, and I think it was only yesterday or 2 days ago when you were at the training last week, was it, that you in the actual fact got recognition for that she'd done that training. Because sometimes the equipment goes awry. It's electronics. And you're talking about ham-fisted old cops like me trying to actually work computers, and it don't always work. It don't always work, I'm afraid. So all we're asking for, plus Councillor Shanker, those that have got iPads, and it's a recognised fact by the IT department, those of us who have got iPads cannot access the training. You need, if you're doing it from home, you need a computer system that you can come in through Citrix to get it. Windows-based. Not everybody has got a Windows-based system at home. They've got iPads. We know that the new equipment coming into the council now for the use by councillors will not be, it will be a Windows-based system rather than we're going away from iPads. But that's not where we're at this moment in time. Everybody is willing to do this training, it's just that we need the ability to be able to do it easily and readily so that we can all comply with legislation. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Barker. Councillor Webb.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I've congratulated you already. I'd like to congratulate Councillor Anderson. He has been a proponent today of training, and he said how good the safeguarding training was that he was with Councillor Williams and myself on last week. That was not computer-based training, Madam Mayor. That was people actually talking to members about the issues of safeguarding and about receiving feedback from existing experienced members, Councillor Williams and myself, as well as learning exactly what safeguarding is about. And that is what Councillor Wood is asking for. He's asking for a review of the way we train, because to back up the safeguarding training, there is actually computer-based training to go with that, and that does need to be completed by members. So all Councillor Wood is asking for, and I think I am asking for, is that we review the way in which we do some of the training. Some of it has got to be done through expertise being put out there by people with knowledge, and members attend those. Now, I know there's been issues around members attending that type of training, but if we are going to be compliant, and if the Standards Board are going to be sought to sort out issues where we are not compliant and make recommendations, then we ought to make sure that when we say mandatory training, that that includes people-based, as Councillor Wood said, chalk and talk training. And having been a trainer myself, I know that people learn in different ways. Some take it on board with modern technology, some take it on board with actually discussion. So please review the training and make sure that people have the opportunity of learning in different ways. And I don't just mean councillors, I mean that as an offer to all the staff on this authority.
Thank you, Councillor Webb. Okay, let's move to the vote then. Yeah, there has to be a recorded vote.
We have to have a recorded vote.
Recorded vote on this, please. So we're approving the recommendations.
Yes, Madam Mayor, if members here this evening are approving the recommendations as printed of 2.1, 2.2 and 2.3, this requires a recorded vote. We've suspended CP Rule 70, so we don't need 10 members to support that, but it will be a recorded vote.
Would members please indicate whether they are for or against the recommendations in the report as I read out their names? Councillor Afzal. Councillor Anderson. Councillor Ashburner. Councillor Banwaite. Councillor Barker. Councillor Bayliss. Councillor Bolton. Councillor Kerr. Councillor Dinser. Councillor Eldred. Councillor Evans. Councillor Froggatt. Councillor Graves. Councillor Grimmadell. Councillor Harwood. Councillor Hassel. Councillor Heselgrave. Councillor Alison Holmes. Councillor Matthew Holmes. Councillor Hudson. Councillor Hussain. Councillor Ingle. Councillor Jackson. Councillor Jackson. Councillor Keith. Councillor Jangir Khan. Councillor Shiraz Khan. Councillor Marshall. Councillor Nater. Councillor Nawaz. Councillor Pegg. Councillor Poulter. Councillor Raju. Councillor Rawson. Councillor Repton. Councillor Ralston. Councillor Russell. Councillor Sandhu. Councillor Shanker. Councillor Skelton. Councillor Smale. Councillor Stanton. Councillor Turner. Councillor Webb. Councillor West. Councillor Whitby. Councillor Williams. Councillor Wood. Councillor Wright. And the Mayor, Councillor Winter.
Thank you. Item 22, we need to exclude the press and the public. Does they? Right, okay, okay. Then can I ask the public gallery to be empty, please?